Time limits. And here, yes, there is a partial improvement. There are time limits imposed onto the local authority. It's 30 days or 60 days after date of application. And that depends on the size. Below 500 is 30 days and above 500 square meters is 60 days. I actually made a mistake and started with that topic. But you cannot occupy a building if you don't have an occupation certificate. There are three conditions to be met for the local authority to issue a completion certificate. And the first one is erected in accordance with provisions of this Act. So basically you submitted the plan, you got the plan approved, you start building. Your plan must, or your building must reflect what you have on plan. You know, this issue about deviations and stuff like that. That's what that talks to, the first point. The second point, conditions on which the approval was granted in terms of Section 7. So when you get an approval for your building application, there will be conditions. Have those conditions been met? That's what the building inspector has to ask himself. The third one, certificates issued in terms of the provision of subsection 2 and where applicable subsection 2A. Because I don't have the screen in front of me, I can't see the next slide. Sorry, people. The reason I talk about certificates, will expand on it a little bit later. Subsection 2 and subsection 2A talks specifically about certain certificates, and it names those certificates. And as we go further along, you'll see where the problem crops up. I already spoke about bylaws earlier on. Section 29 of the Act repeals all bylaws in terms of the National Building Regulations. So basically, if a local authority wants to say, you want to build a house, you have to use an imperial brick as a bylaw. It cannot exist. If they impose certain conditions on that building that derogates from the National Building Regulations, and in terms of the National Building Regulations, it does not exist. It can exist if it is signed off by the Minister of the DTI. So it doesn't matter if another minister signed it, you know, Minister of Forestries or whoever, it doesn't matter. It must be signed by the Minister of the DTI. Then only is it applicable. All right? The other point I need to make here is that if you have a building existing, or you just built a building but it was designed for X use, you know, there's occupancies. You can have an H4, which is a house. You can have a J1, which is a high-risk industry or a warehouse, for example. If you change that use, you are guilty of an offense. You need to submit plans again. So if you had a warehouse, a low-risk warehouse, and you want to convert it into a high-risk commercial service or industry, you need, even without any building change, without changing the building, you need to apply for building application again for the change of use. Okay? Very good reasoning for that. Because the building was designed to cater for a certain occupancy, taking the risk factors of that occupancy into account. You change that occupancy, you need to change the health and safety factors for that increased risk factor. So, some takeaway lessons. Only start construction post building application approval. Yes, you can apply for under Section 7, Section 7.2 something it is. You can apply to build prior to approval. You can. But you need to do an application. Do a written application to the BCO, and if he deems it, hey, for whatever reasons, yes, you can, then only can you start. Okay? The second one, do not occupy a building without an occupation certificate. That's illegal. The third one, that the use or function of a building cannot change without a new building application. One of the reasons I quickly went to the law, went further from here, I'm going to be referencing that to show what the problem is. Right? A lot of times, these obligations by the municipality, the owner, the professional is overlooked. The problems can be attributed to sometimes to ignorance of the owner. The owner didn't know. Okay? Just remember, ignorance is no defense in a court of law. Sometimes it's a failure of the professional. It's a failure of the professional to inform the owner. That's what you've been employed to do. So if you're a professional, advise your client properly. Sometimes it can be attributed to the lengthy approval process and the local authority insisting on non-mandated onerous requests. Before we look at these obligations properly, architectural professionals, note, not informing the owner of these problems is a contravention of your code of conduct. SACAP is sitting next door. SACAP has a code of conduct. You need to, whatever you do as a professional, you need to apply the code of conduct. Before we look at the obligations, I have to state this. The local authority has improved. In the last 6 months, maybe I personally have seen an improvement, and Keeson and Suresh, thank you. Whatever you're doing, there is improvement. So, let's start talking about the problems. The proverbial second bite to the apple. You do a building plan application, it gets referred for A, B, and C. It gets refused for A, B, and C, whatever they are, right? So you go and sort out A, B, and C and put the plan back in. You then get a refusal notice for D, E, and F. And you sort that out and you put it back in, and then you get a refusal notice for G, H, and I. That's 90 days. Oh, not 90. Yeah. If it's under 500 square meters, that's 90 days it has been in the borough. So when people say, or when I said, thank you local authority, there was an improvement, the second bite is not fair. No business runs that way. The other issue with refusal notices is the sewer department and the stormwater department is mandated, or the work under the legislation they work under is the NBR. The building inspector works under the same legislation. So when I get a refusal that states no comment from sewer department, no comment from stormwater department, not acceptable. They are using the same law that I did the application under. If you say no comment from traffic department, that's a totally different law. So that I need to go and fight. But if the local authority is telling me that there's no comment from sewer and stormwater, excuse me, you're admitting guilt. That's my take. Refusal notice is subject to a written reason. We get refusal that say comply with Part P. Part P has 198 subheadings. And I missed out a note, hypothetically speaking, I missed out a note for long radius bend at the bottom of the stack. That's one point out of 198 paragraphs here. And you tell me comply with Part P. I even drew it correctly, I just forgot to write the note as a professional. It's a waste of time. It means me driving down to the borough, I'm saying me, the professional, leave the office, waste petrol, time, effort. Just be a little bit more specific, because the law says written reasons. Refusal based on a bylaw. An example being on-site sewer disposal. Dublin Metro has their own, it's not even a bylaw, if I remember reading it correctly, it says guideline or something like that. On-site guideline, on-site sewer disposal guideline. You cannot refuse me on a guideline. The NBR and the associated, the regulations and the SAN standard specifies what you have to do for on-site sewer disposal. You can only refuse me based on that. Because as I said earlier on in my talk, the NBR has repealed bylaws. You can't use a bylaw to refuse the NBR application. Even stormwater, it's the same issue. Stormwater is a bylaw or a guideline, cannot be used. Subjective matter. Section 6 is objective. Section 6 mandates the BCO to look at subjective matter and tell you whether your application is fit or not fit, or approved or refused. But he only makes a recommendation. So it's all objective, it's easy. One person can do it because it's objective. You ask a question, there's a scientific methodology to follow, and you give an answer. Section 7(1)(b), like I quoted earlier on, is subjective.
Yes, I left my email. But it's not those contact details.
Yeah.
And relates to disfigurement, unsightly, or objectionable. Currently, the refusal is based not on those three things here. The refusals regarding Section 7 is based on overshadowing, which can be related maybe to objectionable. You take 1/10 of a big subjective matter and one person is making a refusal to it. It's subjective. I want minutes of the meeting that was held to tell me that it was objectionable. That's the problem. We ask that the decision based on Section 7 be made by the local authority, which is a group of people, and that the minutes of such meeting that led to the decision be included in the refusal. You cannot base that refusal on that weird guideline they have. If you have read that guideline is actually wrong. It is so wrong. So, that's the end of Section 4.